All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back for another awesome episode. We have another incredible guest with us today. We have Dr. Susie Spirlock in the house. She's a doctor of physical therapy. She's an educator for Barbell Rehab. She's been a speaker at Real Coaches Summit. I know she just did one for the Sleep and Recovery Summit. She's just all over the map. And she also happens to be certified PPSC, pain-free performance, like myself. So I know we're going to jive. I know we're going to jam on some good stuff, get you guys feeling strong and pain-free. So Susie, welcome to the show.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here and I'm excited to just dive into wherever this podcast takes us today.
Yes, I'm glad that you come in with that because I tell everybody we're just going to jam and see where the heck it goes. So it could go off the rails. It could go really productive. Who knows? We'll find out. Hope everybody's buckled up and ready.
It'll be fun regardless, and I'm sure someone will learn something somewhere, whether it's us or whether it's one of your viewers or listeners.
Exactly. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. So let's start it from the top. I know that when it comes to physical therapy, at least in our field, it comes down to kind of this like one or the other, where it's like, I want to be a physical therapist or I want to be a personal trainer because I don't want to just work with elderly population, icing and stimming, but there's so much middle ground. So what exactly drew you to physical therapy and you didn't completely jump ship and go personal training route?
Yeah, so I, like most people that you talk to of why they became a physical therapist, played sports growing up throughout high school. I was a soccer player, played left midfield. My
Did you get
nickname was,
injured?
I did get injured.
Call it.
So got injured, ended up in physical therapy. Looking back, like it wasn't actually an injury. It wasn't like an ACL tear or anything, but I just had some pretty severe glute med tendinopathy on both sides, which looking back, knowing what I know now, I was a very skinny string bean who did zero strength training. And so that was probably stemmed from some sort of that and just doing a lot of the endurance part of the soccer sport and a lot of the rotational, but not a lot of the strengthening and the stabilizing. So ended up in physical therapy. I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. I might want to do this as a career. At the time, I actually wanted to be a veterinarian and had shadowed plenty of different vets and loved every part of the job except for the fact where you have to see the precious little fur babies cross the rainbow bridge. So I was like, nope, not for me. I'm too emotionally invested. What if I just do the med school route? And I was like, I kind of want to start a career and be practicing before the age of 35. So I then landed
as someone
in the
who's
physical therapy
dating
route.
someone going the medical route, I gotta say you picked the right one because she's still like, is it over yet?
Yes, and I have the utmost respect for people going for their MD and DO because of the large time and financial investment that you do have to invest into those careers. But I landed with PT. I wanted to go into healthcare. I wanted to help people, and I wanted to not be on call 24/7. And so I went the route of physical therapy, and which has landed me in a little bit of a different, I guess, career path than most physical therapists end up in, but I couldn't be happier for where I am today.
Love that. Love that. Because there's so much value in like physical therapy and people getting quality physical therapy. Because I know, like, as a personal trainer, we've all had those clients where like they clearly just got ice and stim and they got sent to the corner with their packet. And then some student who's getting their hours is watching them, not really knowing what the heck they're supposed to be doing. And they come back no better. And we're like, well, that didn't do much.
Yeah, and so the first 3 years out of PT school, I worked in one of those clinics. I worked in a very rural, hospital-based outpatient clinic in Oklahoma. My husband's Air Force, so that's why we were there. I would never choose to live there, and thank God we're not there anymore. We're in Charleston, woo. But that's where I worked. And so me, as a new grad physical therapist, coming into this clinic where there were a lot of older generation physical therapists, and I come in with my strength training background and let's get people loaded. Let's get them under some tension so that we can push for these tissue adaptations. I made a lot of people mad, not intentionally, but where I worked, we shared physical therapy assistants. So it was a few physical therapists with myself included, and then we shared the PTAs. And so the older PTs were doing all the stim, the ice packs, the ultrasound, the low level mat table exercises. And then I come in and I'm like combing through the research, giving it to my PTAs to help further educate them, teaching them about principles of strength training and loading. And then the PTAs got confused because they're like, oh, well, then why is this other PT having me do all this other like outdated stuff then? And so it actually, I was trying to do the good for both the patients and the PTAs, but it created quite the rift in this very rural outpatient clinic.
I've been doing this for 30 years. What the hell do you know?
Exactly. And I'm like, I know that times have changed drastically since you were in school. But the funny thing is, even me graduating in 2020 is PTs, we are not taught any of the principles of strength and conditioning in our curriculum. We never once talk about loading. We don't talk about RPE. We don't talk about how to set up a exercise session, how to do the rehab part and the training part and marry them together, because at the end of the day, strength training is rehab, rehab is strength training. And so if you don't go out and seek it yourself, you're going to be stuck in that hamster wheel of doing all these modalities and interventions that are going to potentially bring someone's pain levels down temporarily, but it's not the long-term fix, and it's not going to stick in the way that's going to help people live a pain-free life.
Yeah. And I think physical therapists in particular are like the most important bridge when it comes to getting people not only back to pain free, but like thriving, which a lot of people, when they get injured, don't seem to think is like a possibility because they hear from their doctor who might be old school and say, hey, you're never going to lift 5 pounds again, or just avoid all movement until this goes down and then we'll proceed, when it's like now the new school is like motion is lotion.
Exercise is medicine. I mean, we need these people moving because there are too many Americans and just people all over the world that are not exercising. I don't remember the exact statistic, but I know it's like really, really, I think it's in like maybe the 20%-ish of Americans that are actually meeting the resistance training and cardiovascular just exercise recommendations across the board. And so going into a physician, I love my physicians that I've worked with and referred to, but they're so good at so many things. Exercise is usually not one of them. And rehab of the musculoskeletal system is usually not one of them. So it
And I mean,
pains
I'd
me.
rather them know the really important life-saving
Right,
shit and
right.
just say, go to the PT.
Exactly. It's like when it comes to life-saving shit, I could do CPR on a stranger and somewhere out in public. But when it comes to everything else, I mean, that's the physicians, medical management, management of pharmaceuticals, the life-saving shit, the surgery. That is all their wheelhouse. I just wish more of them, instead of saying stop lifting, stop exercising, stop doing a thing that hurts, would instead find a well-versed, evidence-based physical therapist who also has a network with some really great coaches and personal trainers, so that we can really get this person back to functioning at the higher level that they want to.
Yeah. Now, if somebody's listening and they're like in rural America or Canada or Australia, I love all you guys all around that are listening. But if they're like, oh my God, I don't have access to that, or they don't even know where to look to find somebody, is there like resources or databases where people have certain certs that you would say that's probably a good place to look?
Yeah, so like you said, I'm an educator for the Barbell Rehab Method certification that any rehab professional, whether it's a physical therapist, chiro, occupational therapist, athletic trainer, all the way down to your strength and conditioning coaches and your personal trainers, yoga instructors, so on and so forth. Anyone of those people can take this course. And there's actually a database on the Barbell Rehab website for people that have taken the course and passed the post-course exam. And so that is where I would probably start, because that is going to show that, hey, this person is either a coach or a trainer who now has some experience with modifying exercise for people that are in pain, or it's a rehab professional who knows all the rehabby stuff, but also really knows the evidence that we have to support the importance of strength training and aerobic exercise. So that's probably where I would start. Granted, I know there's not a lot of people internationally that are certified in BRM because they mainly kind of focus in the States and in Canada. So with that, Instagram and social media can be a good place to find someone. I say can because we know that social media can be a little bit of a black hole when it comes to finding a good coach or a good rehab professional. But just simply probably either going on your page or on my page and sifting through the people that we follow could be another good start to find someone either closer to your area or even someone remote. Because like myself, I do all remote. I have clients in Australia, in Hungary, all across the United States and Canada. So it is 100% possible to work with a coach or a rehab provider remotely and still get some really, really great benefits and great care.
Absolutely. Because I think people get caught up in the hands-on aspect where it's like if they go to a chiro, they expect to get popped, or when they go to a PT, they expect to be taken through a movement screen, when it's like telemedicine has come a very long way since COVID. And for a lot of people, it seems like a very viable option, especially if they're no longer in pain and they're kind of in that gray space.
Mm-hmm. And I couldn't agree more, because manual therapy, it has its time and its place, and it can be helpful. I'm not going to sit here and shit all over manual therapy and say, oh, like it doesn't work. But if you're going into the physical therapy clinic and you're getting manual therapy done and it's not followed up with loading strategies that are going to allow you to work through that range of motion or work through a movement that may have been previously painful before the manual, then you're going to be getting manual therapy forever, and you're not going to have anything that sticks within the neurological system. And with remote and virtual, we have a lot of really, really cool ways to get those similar effects of that manual therapy by instructing you to do a certain thing, whether it's a soft tissue mobilization or it's a certain stretch with breath, in order to get those same nervous system benefits without someone having their hands on you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know anybody listening right now, go check out one of the episodes. I had my buddy Phil on here, who's also a PT, and he said this, and would you agree, where it's like, if you see a squat rack in the office, it's probably a really big green flag.
A huge green flag. And that's another thing, that's a good point that you bring up too, is a lot of times I'll tell my clients or talk on social media is, look up physical therapy clinics around you. And usually they'll have pictures of what the inside of the clinic looks like. If it's just a bunch of mat tables with like really light resistance bands hanging on the walls, and no really anything in regards to kettlebells or dumbbells or a squat rack or a barbell, that's probably one of those clinics that's going to give you some e-stim and some ice and say, okay, your 45 minutes is up. Let me collect your $50 copay and bill your insurance $300 for the last hour that we spent you lying on a table.
And it seems kind of tough, especially how you bring up insurance, because I know a lot of people are just going to look at whatever their insurance provider allows them to, and they're like, hey, I really can't like afford this other stuff. Like, what do I do from here? And I'm sure that there's many ways to circumvent that, or even find really good practitioners on your network, but we won't go down that rabbit hole. That's probably like a 4 or 5 hour podcast, or even a week-long podcast. So we'll just leave that to everybody to find out for themselves.
Yeah, fun.
So let's bring it back to the barbell. So I know that when it comes to the barbell, especially in the functional space, and that's actually where like I started up, is in this functional, like barbell's horrible. It's terrible for you. You're going to hurt yourself because it's not functional. Like, what would you say to anybody that's a little hesitant to go to the barbell because they're like, ooh, that's a little intimidating. I don't know about that.
The barbell can be very intimidating, especially if you've never touched it before, and especially as a woman going into the weight room, surrounded by a bunch of dudes, grunting as they're squatting and deadlifting. I mean, that's intimidating, because now you know that the second you walk in there, everyone's eyes are going to be on you like, oh, like, what's this chick doing in here? But I'm so happy to see, as like the past like 5 years have gone on, more women in the weight section. And so with that being said, the barbell can be scary at first, but I will say it is an amazing tool, and it is an amazing piece of equipment to get somewhat comfortable with, because it is going to be the easiest way to load something for a heavy squat variation, a heavy hinge variation, a heavy push variation, and I would say pull, because you can do a lot of landmine stuff, but mainly those like top three: the squat, hinge, and push. Push meaning like bench press or overhead press, things like that. Because yes, the functional training stuff, meaning, using dumbbells, using kettlebells, using sleds, training in multi different planes, is widely important. You're not really going to get that brute strength component, because you're going to be limited by things like ability to load it with your grip strength, and having to stabilize with dumbbells versus a barbell where your hands are on the bar and it's one bar across, and the stability component of that is huge. So it's a great tool to have. I will say, I know my approach to training and rehab is a little bit unique, because I kind of combine like a bunch of different training styles. I have some powerlifting components, some like functional fitness components, some bodybuilding style stuff. And I have found through my expertise and the research that that is going to give people, especially women, the most bang for their buck, because we need women's strength training. We need them to gain muscle mass, which is where the bodybuilding style stuff comes in. We need them to work in multiple planes, and we need them to work on some power moves so that we can stay springy.
Yeah, I love that, because especially how you brought up the fact that there's so many more women in the weight room. I feel like every time I go to a Crunch Fitness, the platforms with the weights are always women. And I'm like, good, you're
Yes.
welcome here. Good, go for it. Like, we need more people doing this stuff. So it's awesome to see. Now, when it comes to starting strength training and using the barbell, I know there's a lot of fear around getting hurt or getting bulky. And I know that there's some people out there that are like, you gotta really, before you even touch a barbell, before you start anything, you gotta get your stability down and do all these holding exercises. Like, I know Peter Attia put a big chunk of that in his book. And I was like, all right, there's a lot of good stuff in here, but I'm just gonna ignore this part. So instead of somebody doing 6 months of dead bugs and quadruped holds and all the other stuff, what would be a good starting point for a lot of people?
I mean, I know there are coaches out there and different certifications out there that will say, hey, before you touch a barbell, you need to be able to do XYZ, and you need to be able to do that super, super well with this percent of your body weight before ever touching the barbell. None of that's true. I used to be someone that believed in that several years ago. Thank
You're
God I
not
have
alone.
changed.
I'll
Yeah,
take I'll take that too.
I feel like so many coaches have gone through these different seasons of believing in all of this black or white, this or that nonsense. And then we finally get to a point and like, oh, it's this big gray area and we can have it all and not have to put all these barriers to entry for certain exercises or certain pieces of equipment. And so I will load someone up on day one. If they've never touched a barbell before, I'm like, hey, have you worked with a barbell before? And if they say, no, I haven't, like I've always wanted to, but I didn't think I could because I saw some person on social media say I shouldn't or couldn't. And so I'm like, well, let's just try it. Because just like every other exercise, there is going to be an entry point where you're going to, if you want to try it, you can try it. You don't need to have all of these checkpoints to check off before you get underneath the barbell or you start doing some barbell work. It is
Yeah.
there for everyone to use. And I would argue that sometimes you're going to get some more stability from the barbell than you will from free weights like dumbbells and kettlebells.
Well, everybody knows, like, when you go to bench press dumbbells, for some reason, you could always bench press more when you do the barbell. Don't know why, probably the stability component, but
Stability.
that's like the only thing that I could see being a barrier to entry is like just being able to actually lift it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
probably a good idea to be able to press two 20-pound dumbbells, or to be able to RDL or deadlift 20 pounds or 30 pounds before the barbell, just because that's the
Right.
weight.
Yeah. And I know, most gyms are going to have your standard 45-pound barbells. Some are going to have the 45-pound bar and a 35-pound bar, which the 35-pound bar in like the CrossFit and the Olympic lifting world is considered like the women's bar. And then if they're a really, really good gym, they're going to have like the training bar, which is going to be even less than that, maybe like a 15-pound bar. So you're able to still load it and kind of decrease that barrier of like, hey, I might not be ready to lift the 45 pounds yet, but hey, look, here's a 15-pound bar that I can utilize and still load up with bumper plates so that I can get that same stimulus.
Love that. I've actually never heard of the training one, because I definitely heard of the 35-pound one, but that's pretty cool knowing that that's out there.
Yeah, I bought one for myself a couple months ago because I told myself I was going to learn how to snatch, and it's still sitting in the corner of my gym, but
It's
we haven't
getting there.
gotten there yet. Yes, we're getting there.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't even touch Olympic lifting in at all until I forced myself to go to a CrossFit class. So I'm like, all right, there's no way of getting around it at this point.
Mm-mm. Nope. If you go to a CrossFit class, you're going to be doing some Olympic weightlifting lifts. So,
Yep, absolutely. But when it comes to the barbell lifts, there's just so much good there. And I think a lot of people need to just like try and challenge that fear a little bit, where it's like, I'm going to give it a try and we'll see if we
yeah.
like it.
Yeah. And that's all you need to do is give it a try. And you may love it, or you may say, hey, this really isn't for me. Or you may say, hey, like, I don't love it yet, but I like it. And a lot of times people just need more practice, because going in and trying a back squat for the first time, it's going to feel a little weird. It's going to be challenging. But I wouldn't say that that one time you try it to just throw in the towel. Like actually run that barbell back squat for a whole entire block, meaning do it 1 to 2 times a week for 6 to 8 weeks before you decide whether or not you're like, hey, I don't really like the back squat, but like, what if I tried a front squat? Or what if I tried a low bar squat? So there's so many different like variations that we can use when it comes to the barbell. You sometimes people just need more practice and then you just need to give it a little bit more time.
Yep. Well, it seems like for fitness or nutrition, I think it's because of all the people online making it seem so easy, but they've been doing it for years. There's this expectation that, oh, I should just get this day one. It's not like a college class or anything else where you have to build a skill and be like, okay, this actually requires some time and patience.
And it does. I mean, like I mentioned, I said I was going to teach myself how to snatch. It is going to look ugly as hell the first time I do it. It's going to be slow. I'm going to feel weak. I'm going to have to try it over and over again just to possibly get that bar to pop up from my hips over my head. But I'm going to train that consistently for a longer period of time. And over the course of that 6 to 8 weeks, you're bound to improve on it. And, I would also recommend if you've never touched a barbell before, ask someone for help. Like if you see someone in the gym that is hammering out lifts and you're like, hey, like I really want to learn that, you would be surprised how many people are willing to help. Or if you want even more help than that, see about hiring yourself a personal trainer or a coach at the gym or virtually online, or even finding a program that is like barbell for beginners that you can run through. And that's kind of like a little plug for myself because I'm currently working on that and have that in the mix.
Hey, plug away. I'm all about hyping everybody up. The king of putting links in the show notes. So you just give me that
Amazing.
link. It's going to be down there, people.
Yeah, so I have that in the works, which it's probably going to be like an 8 to 12 week program. Just, if you've never touched the barbell in your life before, we're going to go over the anatomy of the barbell, how to set up for all of the lifts, different variations that you can do, and then just run it through a program for several weeks or a couple months at a time so you can get a little bit more comfortable with that. And then after that, you can either graduate to my group strength training program, which we have hundreds of women in there who run through all the group training together and have a great community for everyone to be in there and ask questions and do form checks and fun stuff like that. So lots of opportunities out there to learn how to use the barbell and just kind of decrease your fear and increase your confidence a little bit.
That's awesome, especially the group component, because I think people really don't understand how valuable the social aspect is, especially
Mm-hmm.
when you're all trying something new for the first time. It's like going to a cooking class and you're all looking around like, all right, does anybody else look like the instructors? No, just me. Okay.
Exactly. And so that sense of community, because it can be hard sometimes when you have a virtual training program and you go to the gym, you do your program, and then you leave. Yes, you might make some friends while you're there at the gym, but having that community to talk about your wins if you PR your deadlift or lift the most weight you've ever lifted before in a barbell bench press for just getting into barbell training and or talking about your struggles like not having the motivation today or hey, back squats really sucked and I don't like them today, but I loved them last week. That can be just really helpful to kind of let women and just people in general know that you're not alone on your struggles. I mean, hell, I've been on this for 7 years and I still have training days where I go in there and I'm like, yeah, back squat is not vibing today.
Yep, that was literally me today because I tweaked my trap slash neck doing calf raises of all things. And
Stop.
and I'm just like,
No.
well, the machine loaded one where it goes right on here, I lost tension. And just so everybody listening right now, losing tension mid lift is not a good idea because then
No.
wonky stuff happens like this. But this is actually something I wanted to bring up because a lot of people get thrown off by the difference between a tweak and an injury. And there's really not a whole lot of separation between the two because you get one person that's like, it's nothing. And they push through it and make it worse. Or you get the other type where it's like, oh my God, I felt the littlest thing. I'm going to go to the doctor. So how does somebody separate that?
So it's funny you asked that because I just talked about this in my group training for our Wednesday brain gains a couple weeks ago. I like to use something called the traffic light system. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before in regards to pain and training, but essentially, if you have a traffic light, you have your red light, your yellow light, and your green light. If you are in the gym and you feel like you tweak something and that pain or discomfort is a 4 out of 10 or less, you're said to be kind of in that green zone. In that green zone, we want it to be 3 to 4 out of 10 or less, and we want that pain to kind of just calm down over the next 24 to 48 hours and start to decrease and dissipate. However, if your pain is higher than that, let's say like anywhere from like the 5 to 7 range, we like to say, hey, that's a yellow light, meaning that pain level is a little bit higher, and that pain usually lasts like 24 to 48 hours afterwards, or it increases a little bit. That means that we may have some tissue damage within that muscle that you tweaked, and I don't want anyone to freak out when I say tissue damage. That just means like a muscle strain or a muscle tweak. It is something that happens to all of us at some point in our lives, and our body does an amazing job at healing itself. So don't let the words damage scare you. I promise it's not as serious as it sounds. But that yellow light kind of means, hey, I might want to pull back on my training a little bit. I might want to train in the RPE like 5, 4, 6-ish range. And if you don't know what RPE training is, I have a wonderful guide that listeners can download if they want it. But that just makes sure we're not pushing our tissues past their current capacity. So that might look like not training as hard or as intense for that movement that you tweaked or that muscle group that you tweaked, and or giving yourself a little bit more time of rest, and or changing up the exercises that you're doing. And then finally, the good old red light. So that's like any pain or discomfort over that 7 out of 10 that either happens immediately or sticks around for 1 to 2 days afterwards and doesn't really get any better. That red light is normally where I'll tell people, let's give it a couple days, but if it's not better, you might want to go get it checked out. And when I say go get it checked out, I don't mean run to your primary care physician, because all they're going to do is x-ray the area, and they're going to give you some ibuprofen, and they're going to tell you to rest, ice, compress, and elevate. And all of those things are undeniably outdated. So go find yourself a really good rehab professional that you can go and have that body part, that body region assessed. Most of the states in America have direct access where you can go and see a rehab professional without a referral. And then all you need to do is call your physician afterwards and say, hey, I went and saw a physical therapist. Can you please send a referral into their office so your insurance can cover it? I think you have like 30 days to get that referral in after the fact. But I know I just said a lot of words. So questions, comments about all of that.
No, you nailed it. And honestly, I feel like the GP would really appreciate that, because they don't have to go through that monotonous process of like, I can't really do much for you. We're going to x-ray, we're going to give you some ibuprofen and call it a day. Like, this isn't my wheelhouse. So you taking it upon yourself to go and find the right professional would probably save them a ton of time, and you'd be better served that way.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times now 2 days, like I know my primary care, all I have to do is call them and say, hey, can I have a referral to go see this dermatologist? Like I did that last week. And they're like, oh yeah, sure. So a lot of times we don't even need to go physically into the office to our PCPs anymore, depending on where you live. So that can also be a less barrier to entry to go see a rehab professional versus waiting and going to see your primary first.
Yeah. And if they do want to have like some sort of contact, like who's to say telehealth might not be an option? And it's like, you don't even have to like get out of your bed to do it. So there's a lot of options here. We've come a long way with this healthcare system. It's getting better and better, even though it doesn't feel like it.
I know. There are certain parts of healthcare that are doing great and pushing in the right direction. And there are other parts like the whole Medicare physician's fee stuff that I don't even want to open that can of worms on this podcast because it makes me so angry. But that part's not. We need to work on that.
Hey, if anyone listening ever wants to really just like drive somebody nuts they know is a physical therapist, or somebody that relies on insurance in any way, shape, or form at a party or something, just ask them. So how do you feel about it? How do you feel about insurance, copays, Medicare, Medicaid? Like, how do you feel? And just watch them get pissed.
Yes. Like I'm sitting here right now and I'm biting my tongue because I just want to yell.
Yeah, I wish it was easier. But anyway, I know we covered a lot on strength training, but I'd like to cover some other stuff that does tend to come up, because I saw on your page pretty recently that you did a really good post on cycle syncing. And I know this is like a hot topic right now because the ladies are hearing this like, oh my God, that I can time my training around my period and not feel like crap, and I could get better gains because of this. It sounds like the magic pill. What is it all about, and is it worth the hype?
So, for anyone listening who doesn't know what cycle syncing is, basically, it is when you're not on birth control. So, this doesn't really apply to women who are on birth control because you don't really have a normal cycle since you are having, my gosh, words are so hard since I've been sick for the past 10 days. You're having synthetic hormones in your body, which, before anyone gets mad, birth control is not bad. If that's what you need to do for you in this point in your life, by all means, go for it. But as someone who's been off of birth control for the past 4 years, I think, I have noticed how cycle syncing has gotten really popular, meaning that based on the phases of your cycle, you are either pushing really hard or you are pulling back and only doing walking and only doing gentle yoga for the phases of your cycle, like your luteal phase and your menstrual phase, versus pushing hard for your ovulation phase. The research on this is that most women are going to benefit more by using rate of perceived exertion or intensity-based training versus taking whole entire week or 2 weeks off of strength training. Because what this looks like is, hey, I'm going to push hard and do 2 weeks of strength training and then do 2 weeks of super gentle exercise. Well, we're only kind of really half-assing our training at that point. And we know how important muscle mass and strength is for women. Muscle mass to support our hormones, especially as we go throughout the lifespan and enter into things like perimenopause and menopause. And then strength training so that we keep our bones super, super strong as we get older, because we know women are predisposed to developing things like osteopenia and osteoporosis. So we really want more consistency with training throughout all 4 phases of the cycle. And before people are like, oh, well, Susie, like, I don't feel like pushing really hard in my period. I have cramps. I'm not comfortable. I have low energy. Well, guess what? You don't have to, because that's where intensity-based training comes in. You can use this so you can still do the same exact workouts throughout all 4 weeks of your cycle. But on the weeks that you may not be feeling it as much, you can just not do it as hard. Like, use the RPE scale and do it at an RPE 5 or 6 versus the 7 and 8s that you're going to do for the days and the weeks that you're feeling really good. Another reason cycle syncing is not the best is because everyone is different. The cycle syncers are going to tell you to be chill on your late luteal phase and your menstrual phase, but some women, myself included, hit most of their PRs during that late luteal phase and menstrual phase. So the blanket statement of black and white, again, here we go back to the black and white, doesn't apply because everyone's going to be a little bit different.
Yep. And I mean, as somebody who's also not in that camp of like having a cycle, but sometimes you go into the gym feeling like absolute garbage, and then you're like, let's see what my body's going to give me. And you set a PR and you're like, what the hell was this? So it really speaks to the fact that we can't rely on sensation or how we're feeling in the moment, because your body might surprise you. So it almost helps to go in with productive curiosity of, all right, this is how I feel coming in. Let's see what happens.
Yes. And with that too, is a lot of times, especially women, are underfed and under-recovered because they think that they should be eating 1,200, 1,300 calories a day, which is the caloric intake of a toddler. And they think that all of their Orange Theory and F45, like super high intensity HIIT classes, constitutes as strength training just because you're touching a barbell or a dumbbell. Now, those classes can be great. They have a sense of community. They're great for high intensity training, but they are not actually strength training workouts. And they have a really high recoverability rate. So whenever you do exercise that intense, let's say you do it like 3-4 days a week, that is a lot of stress on the body with not a lot of rest. And so instead of just hammering out F45, eating 1,300 calories and getting shit sleep, you're probably going to feel a hell of a lot better if you do 1 or 2 of those classes a week and substitute it with a couple days of actual strength training and then some lower level aerobic capacity zone 2 conditioning work. Eat a damn meal and eat your protein, and then also get yourself some rest. I think that women are quick to jump to the cycle syncing thing because they do feel like crap, because they are under eating and are over exercising within that super high intensity realm of exercise.
Yeah. And you said a word there, and I'm like, I want to dive a little into that, which is the recoverability aspect, because that seems to be a word that nobody has heard of when it comes to trying to burn body fat, to improve body composition, to get stronger. And it's probably one of the most important factors that you need to consider.
Mm-hmm. And so with recoverability, that is basically number one, making sure your programming is smart. People love to be like, oh, well, I got to do cold plunges and I got to use my massage gun and I have to track my sleep with my Whoop. Well, half the time my Whoop tells me that my recovery shit, I do really well in the gym. So these things aren't useless. They can be helpful. But things that I want to look at before I tell you to start cold plunging or using a massage gun or a sauna is, what does your sleep quality and quantity look like? Are you getting that 7 to 8, in my case, 9 hours of sleep a night where your body is able to recover and repair the tissues and build the muscle? Because in your sessions, that's not where you're building the muscle. You're building the muscle when you're sleeping and you're resting and you're just chillaxing on the couch. And then the food aspect of it, your body needs carbohydrates in order to fuel your body for your workouts. It needs protein to repair all the tissues that you
Wait,
just...
one sec. Both of those raise insulin. That can't be right. That can't be right.
Oh man, your
Sorry,
insulin is...
did I open a can of worms?
A little bit, yes. Your insulin is going to rise whenever you eat a meal. It's going to happen. It is a natural thing, and it is a good thing, and we want that to happen. Unless you have type 1 diabetes or type 2 diabetes, there is absolutely no freaking reason for you to be wearing a continuous glucose monitor, and that is just taking away from the people that actually need these devices. I could go off on a big tangent on this. So yes, you did open a can of worms, but
hey,
you need your carbs.
longevity.
I know, right? You need your carbs to fuel your workouts and just your life. You need your protein to recover, and then you need your fats to support your hormones. And so I think the nutrition piece is something that a lot of women are missing because they think that their salads with their 2 pieces of small grilled chicken, like little slivers, I'm not meaning like a big old breast, I mean the little slivers, is what's going to help them fuel and help them burn the fat. What's going to help you burn your fat is changing your body composition, which we need food for, and we need strength training and recovery from.
Yep. And I think a lot of people too don't understand how those calories influence all the stuff that we talked about. Because, for example, sometimes when you reintroduce more calories into your diet and get away from the 1200, all of a sudden your sleep gets better.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden you're able to put more effort into the gym and get better results. All of a sudden you don't have that like trigger response because you're so malnourished that you fly off the rails every single time something doesn't go right during the day.
And all of a sudden, your hormones actually do what they're supposed to do because your body has the correct amount of food to support you just being a living human.
Yeah, but 1,500 calories is going to make you fat. It's too much. It's too much.
Yeah. So if anyone's listening, I mean, I always tell people, hey, like, don't compare the amount of calories that someone else is eating to what you're eating. But as a 30-year-old female who strength trains 3 times a week and does 2 days a week of aerobic training, because I haven't even announced this on social media yet. I'm training for a half marathon this fall. So
hell yeah.
That's fun. Yeah, Susie Squats does running. So, I mean, I ran cross country in high school and soccer, so that's where this all comes from. But I eat anywhere from like 22 to 2,700 calories a day. And I am, some people would say, pretty strong and have a nice body composition. Those like long, lean muscles that women want and don't realize how much you have to eat and strength train to get those.
Yep. And for anybody hearing that is like, I could never eat that. Just know probably right now, you probably can't because you don't have the amount of muscle mass where you can handle that much. But when you build muscle by using all the stuff Susie was just mentioning, you can handle that much. That's why people who have more muscle can handle more carbs too, because your insulin sensitivity is a lot better than somebody who doesn't have that much muscle mass. So another reason, another love letter to building muscle.
Yes, muscle and strength and food are going to be your best friends for all women throughout all different phases of life and all the different hormonal changes that we go through.
Yep.
So if you take anything away from this, take away those three, because we need you well fed, we need you strong, we need you to have muscle mass.
Exactly. Because I know a lot of what I talk about on this show is the 40 plus crowd. Like menopause is starting to become a thing in that mid to late or even early, like maybe earlier, depending on the type of person. So when it comes to that sort of thing, osteoporosis becomes a very, very real thing. So I know in the PT space, this is something that probably comes up a ton because you get people that have, unfortunately, dieted down and done cardio to the point where they've just wrecked themselves. So if
Mm-hmm.
somebody falls into that camp where their bones are not exactly that strong, like they've been eating next to nothing, what would be some good first steps to get to the place that this like wonderland we're talking about of all these calories and muscle?
So first of all, you have to start small. So just like the same thing with just increasing someone's daily activity. Let's say we want them to get to like 8 to 10,000 steps. If they're currently doing 1,000 steps, I'm not going to say all of a sudden, hey, tomorrow I want you to get to 10,000. So we need to do this in a baby stepwise fashion. That might look like, hey, we're going to trade 2 of those cardio or Orange Theory classes that you have per week for some actual structured strength training where we put your body under load, which is going to not only help you build muscle, but it's going to help you build strong bones. Because if you are teeter-tottering with osteopenia and osteoporosis, one of the best ways to help reverse that or prevent that from progressing is going to be by loading your body with some weight, because that talks to the cells in the bones to build more bone because your body's being put under stress. So 2 days per week of some good strength training. And then each week, just try to incrementally increase your calories a little bit. And I don't mean by like 500 calorie jumps. I'm talking like 50 to 100 calories. Nothing drastic, nothing insane. But we want to make sure we do this stepwise fashion in regards to both your strength training and your nutrition so that your body has time to adjust and you're not feeling overly just full and disgusting, because I know when I eat too much food, I just don't feel great. And with that, we want to do it in a slow, progressive manner. I'm not trying to go out tomorrow and run a marathon, because currently I'm running like 20, 25-minute increments. If I would try to run a marathon, I would not succeed and I would fail. So what I'm doing instead is teeny bite-sized pieces over the course of the next 6 months, so I can build up my tolerance to training for that marathon.
So just so I'm clear on this, are we talking graded exposure? Is that where we're going with
We
this?
are.
Wow. It's wild. This thing just keeps coming up. But I mean, to your point, like that's huge. I mean, when anybody is thinking, I want to get started, you got to figure out where the heck you're at and then build up from
Yeah,
there. Because especially with the calories, like you mentioned, it's not even just the physical aspect. Yes, you're going to like be like, oh my God, I'm not used to eating this much. But also you kind of have to prove it to yourself a little bit that you're okay, that you're not going to gain
hmm
fat. And it's the same with weights. As you go up, you got to do it slowly because you got to prove to yourself. Otherwise, you're going to be second guessing yourself. And the second something doesn't go right, you're off.
exactly. And with the weights, I don't want anyone listening to be afraid of them, be afraid of getting bulky, because I can tell you, I have been trying for 7 years to get bulky and I am not bulky.
Yep.
It is very, very hard to do, especially for women in general. And if you're just following a general good structured strength training program, you're not just going to immediately blow up and turn into She-Hulk overnight. I promise you. You're going to build that nice toned, long, lean muscle that all of these women want. And I say that in quotes just because you can't really tone a muscle, and there's no such thing as a long, lean muscle. Muscles are just muscles. They contract and they relax. But I'm saying those words because those are words that usually resonate with a lot of women in regards to physique goals or body recomposition goals.
Yeah. Because if we're being dead honest, if you want long muscles, you got to find different parents. Like you were born a certain
Exactly.
way, your muscles are going to be as long as your bones are. There's no two ways about it. Like that's just a marketing term that's preying on your insecurities.
Exactly.
Now, we covered so many good things. We really
Oh,
did. This took every right turn that I wanted it to, and now from all those right turns, we're full circle. We're back. So, I can't let you go without asking one final question, because every guest leaves a question for the next one without knowing who the heck it's for. So,
oh
are you
God.
ready for your question?
I think so.
All right. This one comes from the most previous podcast, Nicole Doria. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, highly recommend doing so after this. She asks, if you could have one thing in the very beginning of a coach-client relationship, what would it be?
Mm, I would probably have to say 100% open communication, because communication in a coach to client relationship is going to be the make or the break of your success as a client and your success as a coach. Um, Everything needs to be communicated. If you're a client and you don't like a certain exercise, or you don't understand why you're doing something, or you're having a really tough week when it comes to motivation and stress, you need to communicate that to your coach. And if you're a coach and you see these things on your client of like, oh, they missed several workouts this week, instead of just thinking, oh, like they're lazy and they just don't want to do their training, you should probably communicate with them and ask. Because as someone who does all remote rehab and fitness coaching, communication is going to be the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to that coach client relationship.
Yep. You pretty much, in almost every person I've talked to that's also a coach, and myself included, the biggest limiter and the biggest predictor of success is how much you talk, how much you
Mm-hmm.
communicate, because a good coach will always find a way. There will be bad
Mm-hmm.
ones that shut you down and say, just do it, just do it. That's how you know somebody's not a good coach. But if you have a good one in your corner, like Dr. Susie over here, like they'll find a way, they'll help you through it, and you'll figure it out. So
Exactly.
yeah. So thank you so much for hopping on. I really appreciate you
Of
taking the time out of your
course.
schedule. And as a thank you to Susie, if you guys have been listening and you heard one thing where you're like, whoa, that was huge, or you have a friend where you're like, they need to hear this, go send it their way. Tell them that me and Susie say hi and
Hi.
and make sure that you follow so you don't miss another episode. So if they want to check your stuff out, Susie, like they want to get on that beginner barbell program or anything else you're putting out, where can they find you?
They can find me on Instagram and YouTube at dr.susie.squats. And I wish squats was my last name, but it's not, unfortunately.
You
And
could always
then
change it.
my husband and I actually talked about actually changing our last
Really?
name, because it would be, yeah, it would be a lot of fun. And people think it's my last name anyway, so why not? And then my website is moveyourbonespt.com, and that's where you can find more information about my rehab and fitness coaching services, my group program, as well as all those freebies that I was talking about in regards to the RPE training, and then soon to be the traffic light analogy on there as well.
Nice, nice. Well, just so everybody knows, those are also going to be in the show notes. Go take a look. And again, thank you, Susie, for hopping on. And thank you guys for making it all the way to the end. I'll see you all same time, same place next week. But until then, go kick some ass. I'll see you later.